Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and today we are launching a brand new LEGO Star Wars review series, where I review some sets that actually are not official LEGO sets, but instead are custom MOCs from Brickvault. So Brickvault is a great place to get instructions for some of the best Star Wars MOCs out there. And you can see above my head, not only do I have a lot of different LEGO sets displayed, but I also have quite a few different MOCs which I'll be making my way through, because it is my goal throughout the series to review every single Star Wars model Brickvault has for sale. And today we're starting off with a very interesting one. This is the TIE Brute from Solo: A Star Wars Story. It actually featured heavily in a deleted scene, which featured Han Solo at the Imperial Academy learning how to fly, but unfortunately because that scene was cut, we really only saw this vessel for a few minutes chasing the Millennium Falcon, just for a brief few seconds of screen time, but it certainly made an impact. It is a lot beefier and larger than other standard TIE fighters, and actually has this engine pod here, which as you can see, by rotating the back here, actually does have a play feature where you can angle the guns yourself. This is a really cool model, and it has been built by some of the most talented LEGO designers out there. Now, Brickvault has some of the coolest LEGO TIE Fighter collections in their inventory. Actually, if we take a look up here, you can just see some of the other Brickvault stuff, such as the TIE Defender up there. That is a really well-built one. We've got the standard TIE Fighter, which is a classic, of course. And moving on back here, we have even more stuff. We've got a TIE Interceptor. Let's see if we can find that here. Actually, right here is the Royal Guard version of the TIE Interceptor, so expect a review of that one pretty soon, as well as all sorts of different stuff, including the very elusive TIE Bomber, which is right up here, which LEGO still has not remade ever since the original TIE Bomber, which you can see right in front of it. Just the difference in build quality is alone to really see the amount of detail that's included in some of these models. Now, the Brickvault models are definitely for more display purposes rather than for play, so they are going to be a lot more fragile, some more fragile than others. So throughout the course of this review, I'll be explaining what I think about how the actual build came together, if there were any illegal techniques used, and if at the end of the day, would I recommend it for you to build and play with yourself. And so let's jump into the first one, the TIE Brute, right here. Alright, so here we have the TIE Brute from Brickvault from Solo: A Star Wars Movie, and the first thing that you really need to know about building any sort of TIE fighter model from Brickvault is that the wings, for the most part, are almost always going to be the same. Sure, the patterning and slight size might differ from model to model, but for the most part, all of the TIEs on Brickvault are built with the same exact wing technique. Now, at first glance, this may seem pretty fragile, but I'm actually very happy to report that this is one of the sturdiest wing techniques that I've ever seen, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that LEGO has not used it maybe for a more Master Builder or UCS style TIE fighter rather than just using plates, because it looks a lot better and honestly is even sturdier than some of the official LEGO set attempts. Let me quickly explain how this works. So essentially you start by building up different panels. There are 4 triangular ones, and then you have a whopping total of 8 different of these other smaller panels, and while I will have to mention that it is very, very time consuming and very brick intensive, which is probably why LEGO doesn't do it for official sets, the end result looks really good and these feel really, really sturdy. You can see the wings actually have their own thickness and depth to them because they of course are 1 brick thick rather than just being a plate, and it really does do a lot in terms of completing the effect. But the reason why they are so sturdy is that they are connected on multiple different angles. So first of all, as you can see here, we've got these actual support pylons here, which are not just for show, they actually specifically connect. If I disconnect this one, they connect to a profile brick right there. And secondly, you actually have these being connected by clips. So you have a clip right here, let's just cover that up like so, another clip here, and a clip on the bottom. And the clips literally connect all the way around the wing, which means that every single one of these is connected as a single individual piece, which is really great and makes it very, very sturdy. The way that they in turn are connected to the main fuselage here is also by a similarly robust series of interconnected snot bricks, which really makes everything be well held together. If you can see here, I'm going to hold the pod here and try to jiggle the wing, that is not coming off. It's very, very sturdy and very, very impressive how that's done. So as we work our way into the actual main cockpit here, this is a little bit larger and more robust than most of the tie builds from Brickvault, because of course it does feature a much larger canopy and cockpit, and of course the side blaster pod as seen in the actual model itself. But again, the general building techniques are very similar to many of the other Brickvault ties. The way this works is that you have a series of plates running on the top and the bottom of both sides, held in together by multiple, and I mean multiple different studs on these side connections. If it isn't obvious, you've got some here, you've got some here, 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 and here. So studs on these side connections are 100% fully abound, and the way that works is that it really all does come together to a very robust spaceship. If it wasn't for the wing pod on this particular model requiring such a thin strut to allow this to actually rotate, this would be rock solid. As you can see, the other wing is wobbling a little bit, but that's really only a fault of this model rather than any of the other ties in particular. And so let's kind of take a bit of a closer look at exactly what we have to deal with here. So as I showed off at the beginning of the video, you actually have the gunner pod, which is activated by twisting the engine on the back here. Now this is a very clever feature that I honestly didn't expect whatsoever. When I bought the instruction manual, I really just wanted to get this aesthetically, and I did not even expect this to move. So this was a massive benefit, and it's actually kind of an outlier, because for the most part, these Brickvault MOCs are pretty much just meant for display and not play, and you rarely ever see quote-unquote play or action features like this. But this is actually integrated really well, is surprisingly very sturdy, and works fantastically. Really the only downside is that because there's so much weight on the front here, as you already saw kind of near the beginning of this video, this just tends to droop downwards on its own, and it does look really awkward when it's just pointing downwards. But again, if you kind of arrange it in a slightly upwards facing position to begin with, then you don't really have that problem. Like something like this, you're probably going to be okay. Now, taking a look at exactly the way the cockpit is constructed here, this is again using a lot of fascinating building techniques, and surprisingly none of which are actually illegal for this particular model, where you can see all sorts of bricks being interlaid from the sides, on the top, and pretty much when you see a brick connected, it is doing something structural. And that means that this is a very, very sturdy model. I mean, I can really shake this around, swoosh it, play with it, really go crazy with in terms of how to play with this model, and it will not break. And that is probably one of the only models or series of models, because pretty much all the TIE fighters are like this, that actually do have that level of stability for these reviews. Throughout the course of these Brickvault MOC reviews, you're going to be seeing a lot of very, very fragile MOCs that literally fall apart if you look at them wrong. This is not the case, although unfortunately it is a little bit of an exception. Most of the MOCs on there are very fragile. I'm just very happy that this one is not. So inside the cockpit, we actually have a full range of detailing. Let's just try to zoom in here and take a look at what we actually have here. As you can see, we have a bit of a window in the back. You've also got control panels on all sides of the cockpit itself, and even a flight joystick for the pilot to move himself. Now, if you're wondering how to actually get a pilot on the inside of this craft, it's actually really easy because they've actually made this fully easily removable. You literally just detach it, you stick your guy in, you can plop this right back on where it should be. Super simple. And let's just get that fully attached there, close it up, and you're good to go. Now what's really cool is that the top hatch actually does open, although this is really mostly kind of only for show. The reason for that is because for this specific model, the top hatch just doesn't have enough space for a pilot to actually go in through the top, so it kind of really is only for show, although they did have to do it that way to make it more structurally sound, so I do understand why that was the case. Now, moving on to the gunner pod here, unfortunately you cannot hold a minifigure in there. It's also kind of just for show, but I honestly didn't really expect them to hold a minifig there, especially with the spinning function. That would have been nearly impossible to get done with purely system pieces. Honestly, I was already very surprised at how they actually pulled it off here, which you can see they're using curved rail pieces and one of the jet engine pieces in the back there with 4 fins on the back, which rotates and allows you to adjust it like so. A very, very inventive design. Honestly, with that, we've about summed up the different aesthetics and building techniques of this model, and I do kind of just want to very quickly go over the building experience because I do feel that's important in purchasing a MOC like this. Now, the building instructions were incredibly professional, and honestly, they were pretty much official LEGO instruction manual quality, which was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. There were pretty much no mistakes that I noticed in any of the instructions. Sure, there were some awkward things in terms of having some of the pieces here just being told to mirror instead of just having a different kind of call out in the instructions, but it was very, very easy to follow, and honestly, even a beginning LEGO builder, I would say, could build something like this. And I cannot say that about pretty much any other MOC, because the other ones we're going to get to in this video series are, again, a lot more fragile, and because of that, a lot more frustrating to build. This never actually fell apart once while building, which is a pretty common occurrence for most of the other MOCs, and it was very, very simple to come together. And despite all the crazy building techniques being used to put this together, throughout the entire build, I never felt confused or lost in terms of the building process, or wondering why certain things were coming together a certain way. Everything felt like it made total sense, which is why I was very, very pleased with this final result. Ultimately, I decided to start this review series with this tie brute because I feel like this is kind of the gold standard for what you would want to see out of a custom LEGO Star Wars MOC. You've got a play function, it is playable and swooshable, it is durable and doesn't fall apart, and the building experience is fantastic. One other thing I will mention is that much like official LEGO sets, I actually have not seen this really done with any other MOC, but they actually specifically set aside different colored pieces on the interior, such as making one side red and one side yellow and one side blue, just to make it easier for you as a builder to know which side you're working with while the model is actually flipping around. Throughout the course of the construction, before all of the actual exterior pieces came on, it could have been very, very confusing to actually know which side you're actually supposed to be working with, whether the front or the back, but thankfully the instruction manual covered that for you by actually encouraging you to build with different pieces. And lastly, the thing I do want to say is that what was really, really fantastic about this model is that not only did it include all of the very excellent instructions, but at the very beginning of the instructions, it actually included some possible part alternatives to swap out pieces for less expensive alternatives. For instance, these domes here are built up of much cheaper pieces than the larger 4x4 dome, which really so far only has appeared in one large set and hasn't appeared since, causing the aftermarket prices of the much larger hemisphere to skyrocket in price. Sure, it might look a little bit better if all of this was one sphere, but the instructions specifically teach you how to do it for a cheaper build to allow you to get pretty much the same effect, but not break the bank while doing so. And I really appreciate that, because I feel like more MOCs should do that. A lot of crazy MOCs out there use really expensive pieces, and I'm really happy this MOC actually paid attention to allowing you to choose whether or not you wanted to spend a lot of money on achieving a very similar effect like so. And finally, it's time to talk about the cost. So the cost of this model was obviously not cheap. Not only were the instructions quite expensive, I will say the instructions on Brickvault are rather expensive, but in my opinion, worth it. I would say the parts to build this model cost me around maybe $120 to $150 US, which is approaching the cost of the Ultimate Collector Series TIE Fighter, which released several years ago, which was around $200, probably would have been $250 or $300 nowadays. So it is already kind of getting up there in price for what is effectively a smaller minifigure scale fighter. That being said, this has and achieves a level of detail that is completely unseen in any other Star Wars build. I've never seen any official LEGO set do stuff that this build does, not even from the Ultimate Collector series. And sure, this probably would not be able to pass off as an official LEGO set today just because of the weird building techniques, and maybe some stuff is probably stuff that LEGO would not do themselves, such as the rotating function there maybe not being as sturdy in terms of holding up to play. But honestly, this was kind of the real deal in terms of getting the most screen-accurate vehicle that you could possibly imagine. And again, this is really why I like building Brickvault MOCs, it's for quality stuff like this. Really, the only single one downside that I have to this is, again, because the model is specifically built to allow this to rotate, when you pick it up and swoosh it around, this does wobble a little bit. I don't think it's ever going to break, but the wobbling does worry me slightly. That being said, again, this is not an issue on any of the other TIE Fighter vehicles because, again, they don't have a rotating thing like this, which required a very narrow middle strut for this to actually rotate around. As you can see, normally it's like this. you're not going to be rotating this wing anytime soon. This is very sturdily on there. So most of the time, you're just going to have stuff like this. It's just because this one is so different and out there that they have a completely different function. But with that, we have summed up our review of the TIE Brute. Thank you all for checking in. I figured the perfect way to end this video is by doing a little bit of swooshing around my LEGO collection. I literally just slammed it into the wall there and it didn't break, as you can see, very sturdy. And if you don't believe that this is very swooshable, well, just check this out. There we go. We've got some fun swooshing with this massive TIE Brute, and it is staying together. Very, very impressive. Alright, with that, we have taken a look at the stunning TIE Brute model from Brickvault. Let me know down in the comments below, do you think the instructions are worth the price? Have you built this yourselves? And if so, what do you think of it? And if not, do you plan on building any Brickvault models in the future? Also, let me know down in the comments if there is a particular model you want to see me review. I have purchased instructions for almost all the Star Wars stuff already, so it's just a matter of me buying the parts from Bricklink and building it myself. I'm kind of just going in a random order of what I find interesting, so if there's something you want to see, let me know, and if there's something that appears by popular demand, I will expedite it on my schedule for reviews. I hope you enjoyed the series, and thank you so much for tuning in to DuckBricks. Stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye-bye for now.